Hello, everyone. I hope that you've had a chance to get the textbook and have started to read the first chapter, Promoting Success for All Students. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of the chapter and kind of highlight some of the main important parts to take note of as you're reading. Hopefully, you've had a chance to print off the PowerPoint that goes along with the chapter to take notes on. To highlight the important things. This chapter is a great overview of special education. It starts back with the background of special education, where it came from, the laws, where it all started, and how special education has evolved over time. And to give you a little background about me, I am actually currently a fourth grade teacher, a general education classroom teacher in a public school. And so I work on a daily basis with students under the special education department in 504. And just like the next slide talks about, they're included in my class and we do inclusion. For the most part, we want to try to have students in the room as much as possible, included in lessons, included when the students go to lunch, recess, when students go to their special classes, music, art, PE. We want to have the students included with their peers. Mainstreaming used to be the word where they would kind of have students come into the room for different parts, like I mentioned before, lunch, recess, those kind of areas, but pulled out for their academic. And now teachers are working more on having students included into the classroom under the inclusion side and under getting their special education needs met in the classroom. So that might include another teacher coming in to support the general education teacher, an assistant teacher coming in. It might mean that the student is getting the lesson in class and then are pulled out for a little bit of independent work. It just fits each student. And so what's so great about the special education department and the laws are that each student can be met on their individual needs. And so different students with special needs, it talks about students who have a disability that negatively affects their school performances are served by the special education and federal laws. And so that's so important to remember that this is all under law. So as a general education teacher, you have to follow the needs of the special education and hold their right to a free and appropriate public education. So everyone should have a public education. Some of the other groups to consider are the gifted and talented, culturally and linguistically diverse students are our ESL students, and then students at risk of school failure. So maybe have a hard time learning, or maybe they're not as successful in class. And so later in the chapter, it talks about different things that you can do as a general education teacher to help them be successful. So the IDEA Improvement Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, is what these areas are covered under that. And in the textbook, it talks about that where education started on page 10 gives you a layout. It has a figure 1-3 of the landmark legislation for persons with disabilities. And on that graphic, it shows that the Individuals with Disability Education Improvement Act was of 2004. And then as you go through, these areas follow under it. And then we also have students with disabilities in these areas. And one to keep in mind is the ADD and ADHD are covered under other federal legislation as types of other health impairments. And so students that maybe don't fit in one of these categories that were mentioned can fall under other health impairments. And so even if they had a very short time, maybe had an illness and they were out of school for a short amount of time, they can fall under the other health impairment section, and then they can get the special education accommodations that they need even for that short amount of time. So to keep in mind, students who fall under special education aren't there through don't have to be there through their whole entire education career. They can be, but they don't have to. And it actually goes even into their college. They can get what they need in college, which is amazing. So they don't have to fall under that the whole time through. Maybe it's a temporary, and they can hold the meetings and get the individual plan together for students. So the special education department is very fluid in the amount of time that the student can be covered under, and it fits what they individually need. So here are the list of the landmark legislation that I was mentioning on page 10. And then the benefits of students with special needs, it just is so amazing what it can do. So having students remain with their typical peers to maximize extent possible. Students with disabilities can achieve academic success in mainstream classrooms, and general education students benefit from the association with their peers in special needs. And they can be together to help with their social needs too. According to the federal law, special education is instruction specifically designed to meet the unique needs of students, and it's of each student. So it can be in their classroom, in their homes, in their hospitals. So like I was mentioning before, if a student was going to be in the hospital for a temporary amount of time, or maybe they were in an accident and they need to be homeschooled for a while, they can get what they need under the special education department so that they can have their free public education. And then the definition of special education is individually planned, specialized, intensive, goal-directed instruction. So that's what I think is so amazing about it, that it's all individual for each student so that they can be successful. Here are some related services that once students are under the special education department that they can receive. They can get this, and even schools have more. My school that I work at doesn't just have speech and language services for articulation, but they also have social skills classes where students can learn about pragmatics and having conversation skills with people. Supplementary aids and services, these supports provided to the students with special needs to help them succeed in general education classes and other settings. So they can have accommodations to fit exactly what they need. So if they have a hard time with reading or their fluency reading, then they could have their textbooks on tape, and we have them online now, and so students can have it read aloud to them. And we have different softwares where the textbook or even the book they've checked out in the library is read to them. So when a student when a teacher has a need or worried about a student, or maybe a parent brings it up, then they start to watch the student. And if they fall under the special education department, they will create an IEP, an individualized education program or plan. And this is what the students are going to go through for everything that they need. The least restrictive environment is what you will talk about when you are developing that IEP for a student. You want them to be able to get exactly what they individually need, but in the right environment. And so a lot of times a least restrictive environment is the general education classroom, or it might be that they need to be in a resource room for a little while. It depends on the student. And so as a committee, to develop this plan, the teachers, the administration, the council,